G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And generally when buying dodgy cars from Turner's auctions, it is strongly recommended to go and inspect the car first, especially if you're planning to fix it up and flip it on. So today is a good lesson in what not to do. Since leaving my sales job at Honda of 5 years, I've now got myself qualified as a motor vehicle trader, which means that I can buy and sell as many cars as I want, as opposed to the normal 6 cars a year limit. And so, to keep myself busy, as this is my job now, I need to get my hands on a lot of different cars. So I keep an eye on Turner's auctions, Trade Me, and Facebook Marketplace for any interesting deals that happen to pop up. Usually on Turner's Damage, there's just a whole lot of rubbish, frankly, because every car that gets written off by an insurance company, repossessed by a finance company, or stolen and recovered by the police ends up on Turner's Damage. So there's a whole lot of cars on there that are borderline unrecognizable after having a substantial accident or being deregistered, so pretty much impossible to get back on the road again. However, every now and then, there's a few cars that pop up that are just a bit high Ks or a little bit rough or with a few small issues or an expired warrant of fitness, and with a little bit of work, they can turn out to be pretty decent flips. When looking for cars, I desperately try to avoid Japanese import cars with horrible aftermarket radios that you can't change the language on, toll card readers that talk to you, and other random electronic gizmos they seem to like installing in their cars. Buying something first registered in New Zealand with electronics that are made specifically for our market and our language, like my Skoda Octavia VRS, or at the very least a fairly modern European Japanese import car where you can change the language on the factory and period correct screen like my M135i, is the way to go. But this Mazda Atenza, despite being an imported Mazda 6, looked pretty good thanks to it having a completely factory interior. It's even got keyless entry, auto lights, and the Bose stereo system. The description stated no known issues, just that the WAF and reg were a few weeks out. So I bid it, and I made my first mistake. I went over budget. I was expecting to spend around $1,000 on auction fees, flights and fuel to get it home, and fixes to get it to pass a WAF. To allow for some profit, with room for negotiation, I didn't want to spend over $3,000 bidding. Annoyingly, right before bidding on the Atenza, I missed out on a few cars that I was actually quite keen on, like a facelift 325, Golf GTI, R32, and a VR6 TT, because people were just paying extortionate prices for them. So, getting a little desperate to buy something, I ended up pushing the budget out on the Atenza to $3,400. But Turner's has 20% success fees, so when you factor the $3,400 bid in, with the fees, the flights, and the fuel to get it back, now my cheap Atenza owes me $4,300. And that wouldn't be the end of the world, save for the fact that there's a lot more issues with it than I initially thought. The good news is, we've got the Mazda home to Wellington. However, my second mistake of not inspecting it first is coming back to bite me. Admittedly, I couldn't really do a whole lot about it because I'm in Wellington and the car was in Auckland, but there were a couple of things that weren't mentioned in the auction description. I knew it didn't have a warrant of fitness, so I was expecting to perhaps have to replace some bulbs, do a headlight restoration, and maybe a bit of a brake overhaul to get that to pass, but that's nothing major. What wasn't mentioned in the auction description was one of the engine mounts is completely broken. So when you put your foot down, the engine makes a horrible racket. Take a look at this video. It's pretty funny how much the engine moves around in the engine bay. Oh, yeah. Okay, we've figured out the problem. This mount is completely dead. And I've been driving for the best part of quarter of an hour now, and the engine is still cold. So let's get it down to my mechanic Jack at my old workplace Honda to get a new warrant of fitness, registration, engine mount, and thermostat. Jack began by draining out the oil, which was black as molasses, and the coolant, which was thankfully still green. New oil went in, and then he took to removing the power steering pump to access the dead thermostat. With the hoses off, he put the new one in and bled all new coolant through the system. The headlights came out really nice after a full sand down, polish and clear coat, and then he lowered the car onto a jack under the engine, which lifted it off the old broken mount. The new mount went in, and when I came to look, it was staggering the difference that it made. Oh, it's so quiet! The smoothness! However, it still fouled the WAF. Turns out these rear tyres are cracking all around the edges because they're 11 years old. So once more the margin is coming down as I will have to get them replaced. But the good news is everything else is sorted, so let's start on the cleaning. I began by water blasting the exterior. After months of clearly never being washed and a lengthy drive back to Wellington, the paintwork was looking pretty sad. Like with the Camry, there was mildew growing in all of the gaps and crevices and spiderwebs everywhere. And the worst part was the wheels! The brake dust had started to eat away at the paint, causing rust bubbles to form, which then stained the wheels so badly that everything I tried couldn't get the stuff off. When in doubt, just use everything. And amazingly, just caking the wheels in every chemical under the sun actually kinda worked. So, with it finally clean, I fully clay barred it to clear out all of the remaining contaminants, and then, with it dried off, I set to work cutting back the incredibly swirled paint. Normally, I just target certain areas to get the car good enough because most people don't really care about a few swirls when buying a used car. But I really wanted to get this car into tip-top shape so that anyone who comes to have a look will be suitably impressed, especially given it owes me a lot more than I planned for. With a whole day's worth of paint correction, finally it was gleaming like it did when it left the dealership in Japan 17 years ago. The interior, thankfully, wasn't too bad, so with a thorough vacuum and wipe down of all the plastic surfaces and windows, it was ready for a new home. Clearly, whoever owned it previously decided that their beloved, well, I was going to say beloved, but they didn't exactly look after it, so we'll go with well-used Atenza had its best days behind it. So they took it to Turner's under the expectation that it would meet its end on a damaged auction. But as with every car that meets the Kiwi Car Life garage, we've given it a new lease on life. The paintwork is near immaculate, the interior is clean, and the 2.3 litre engine is running happy as Larry. Let's see how it drives. The Mazda Atenza is complete. My entire life I've generally been an Accord Euro fan. If you're looking for an affordable, reasonably cheap to run and pretty reliable car with some modification potential that looks really great, the Accord Euro is a fantastic option. And I never really considered the Atenza because, well, they're no good for modifying. No one really makes parts for these. But having now owned one, if you're just looking for a car that does everything the Accord Euro does and you're not really that interested in modifying it, this is actually a really strong competitor for an Accord Euro. The 2.3 in this one, while not the best sounding engine, it revs all the way out to 7 grand. The handling, I would say, is on par. It's decently quick, like driving it back from Auckland, even with the broken engine mount, it's easy enough to get past people, that's for sure. And one of the other big advantages is that the gear ratio's so much shorter, so it just stays in the power band a little bit more. Steering feel, it's hydraulic. I know that because Jack had to pull the hydraulic pump out of the way to change the thermostat. And it gives fantastic feedback. Handling, even though the tyres on this are not exactly fantastic, is really good. But the ride quality manages to be nice and comfortable. For the age and Ks of this car, after the work that we've done to it, I reckon you will struggle to find another Atenza that looks as good as this. And a small part of it kind of goes, maybe I should just keep it for myself and daily drive it. But no, I need to stick to my plan. This car will be for sale very shortly. If you're interested, hit me up on Kiwi Car Life Autos. I'd like it to go to a good home, someone who's going to enjoy it and look after it. And I will very much look forward to seeing you again next time.